After the 2008 financial crisis, countries such as the UK, the US, and most EU countries had gotten extremely large amounts of additional public debt because governments spent a lot of money on quantitative easing measures, on bailing out banks and things like that. And so there was slow growth in the economy. That meant that interest rates were really, really low. And then these governments decided pretty unilaterally across the board to cut public spending, what's called austerity, cut public services and cut benefits in order to reduce the amount of public debt. However, what they should have done is, because there were very low or zero or even in some cases negative interest rates, governments should have rapidly and aggressively spent more money. Now, this may seem counterintuitive if you just put on massive debt, but what they can do is, because interest rates are so low, they could have taken on more debt at relatively little cost and use that to invest in the economy. And having done that, the economy would then recover quicker and grow as new jobs were created, new markets opened, and just generally the infrastructure of the country improved. The economy of the country also would improve, the amount of money people have would improve, and so the economy would start to grow again. Now, what this would do is that then the interest rates start to go up, and so this might seem really, really bad for the amount of debt would be that. However, because the economy would have improved and grown, the amount of debt would have actually decreased. Now, why is this? This is because debt is measured as a proportion of the size of the economy, as a proportion of GDP. So if the increase in the size of the economy outpaces the increase in the amount of debt, even if more debt is being taken on, the actual amount of debt reduces, meaning that the amount that the government needs to spend as a proportion of their total budget and servicing debt decreases because they're getting more and more tax revenue. This is what governments across the world should have done after the financial crisis 2008 and the subsequent recession. Instead, they didn't. And since then, in a lot of Western countries, we've seen pretty low growth all the way up until now. Now, obviously, we're talking about this from the benefit of hindsight. And so the question is, what can we do now? Now, interest rates are not zero now because of inflationary shocks due to external pressures such as the war in Ukraine and the subsequent rise in oil prices. Interest rates were quite high, which means that borrowing costs a lot more money. And so investing more into infrastructure, into public services, into benefits is more expensive in terms of debt, will increase debt servicing costs, which could cause a debt crisis. However, there's another alternative to increasing debt if you want to increase public spending, and that's to increase taxation. Now, obviously, increasing taxation sounds like a pretty bad thing. The current UK Labour government has promised not to increase taxation on working people, whatever that means. But there is a very simple solution to this. You don't want to increase taxes on working class people, on poorer people, because they spend all of their money pretty much on rent and basics, and so if you reduce the amount of money they have, they're going to be spending less, and that's going to hurt the economy. However, what you can do is you can tax large amounts of wealth that's just sitting there and not doing anything. So if you do a wealth tax on incredibly large amounts of wealth, then you can extract wealth that's sitting to no benefit, that's just essentially gathering rent, and you can use that to invest in the economy, invest in public services, and that will cause additional growth, meaning that the economy will grow again, meaning that our debt problems will be reduced. Now, this is what governments should be doing right now. It's not necessarily what they are doing right now. However, if you think they should be doing this, I hope you give this video a like, subscribe maybe. And if you want to know more about what austerity is and why it's bad, I have some videos on that as well. I'll see you in the next one.